Stuart,
Yes.
I am curious if you had any observations or point of views about the role of information technology and specifically social media and AI on the role of one's spiritual development. I mean, obviously, it can be a force for enormous good, bringing us together like this, but I find sometimes it can be a distraction and also an obstacle to meaningful connections.
Tanya, what's the question?
Do you have uh, any observations about how we can use?
Well, look, I have 1,000, maybe more. Ellie can tell you better than me on uh, talks that I've given on Facebook, on YouTube, on these social media stations. I don't know how many people it touches. I don't get a lot of response from them. But they're there, and periodically one or two people get in touch with me and they want to come to class. Usually they don't last very long in the classes. They're looking for something else. But I don't know. I mean, look, everything has a purpose in this world. And AI, you know, I mean, when Kenny did a bunch of work on my book, Tantra, he was using AI to do a lot of things to make it easier to put the book together. So yeah, there are purposes for it, but look, I am not in that world. I'm not connected to that world. You know, so I really don't have an answer about how that world can serve humanity. Right now, I see it as serving a lot of greed.
Mm,
People
mhm,
trying to make fortunes, money beyond all human comprehension, and then trying to control the world
mhm,
because they happen to be the richest person on earth. They're trying to control all the governments on earth. And it's power. And, it's the one thing that all my life I always had to transcend and get above, and it seems like all of those social media things are about money, about a few people, oligarchs, using that world to control, to make tons of money, to use other people. I don't know. And I don't know. I mean, the good things that have happened for me is, as I say, I have 1,000 of these talks I give. These talks are priceless that I give. There's over 1,000 of them on Facebook and YouTube. How many people go there? What kind of response? I don't know. Uh, Zoom, which is a technological thing, made it possible for me to do these classes. We had COVID, we had really serious, and epidemics in the world. People couldn't even go out of their house. And I said, what am I going to do? How am I going to teach this amazing thing that I've learned in my life? And then somebody told me about Zoom, and I had no idea what Zoom was. And here I am, 4 years later, still doing this on Zoom. It's a technological thing, and using it. Do I like doing it on Zoom? No, but it doesn't matter. It's serving people, it's serving my growth. So it doesn't matter if I like it or don't like it. I do it because it helps me and it helps a number of people that I know that come to these classes. So everything has a purpose. And when you get beyond this need for power and just greed that transcends all human comprehension. I mean, these people that make this kind of money, they couldn't spend this money in the next 48 lifetimes. And yet all they think about is how they can increase their financial position in life. Some of them use it for philanthropy, and I guess most of them do to get tax write-offs. Mostly, they use those things for philanthropic purposes. But I don't know, Tonya. I don't know the answer. I know that I have used it in order to help you with your spiritual life. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
And frankly, do I like Zoom? No, I don't. I do this 7 times a week, 2 hours each time. There's 14 hours a week I do this. And it's very difficult to do it. I would much rather have people like I used to have years ago come to my loft and have classes and dinners. And I mean, it was really, it was socially wonderful. It was spiritually wonderful. I used to really enjoy it. So, yes, I do it because it helps you. It helps, the people sitting here in these classes, and it helps me to grow. And I need a force in life to help me to grow. And whether I like it or I don't like it is secondary to the fact that it's a way to serve God. So I don't know. I mean, you read in the media about these people and it's staggering. I mean, and the thing is that nobody learns. That song, when will they ever learn? They never learn. They never learn that the greatest treasure in life is not how much money you have, it's how big your heart is and how open your heart is and how deep the love goes inside you and the willingness to serve a higher force of energy in the universe. Everything else is transient. There are no more I mean, there's a family of Rockefellers, but I mean, I'm not talking about the original guys that created all that madness. They're not around anymore. And then you have all the generations that follow that live off of the work of the one generation, that created, you know, all these industries and railroads and banks and, et cetera, et cetera. Do we need money? Yes, we need it. But how much do we need? I mean, I used to have a very good massage guy. He was a Tai Chi master, this guy. He was a Korean friend of mine who used to be a very good client of mine at my store, and I knew him even before. And but he was a very good massage therapist. And he used to go with his elbows and he would move bones in my body and get rid of it. I mean, it was unbelievable what he used to do, this guy. And anyway, in one of his massages, he's talking about how much money does a person need to get through the day? I said, how much money does it take to eat 3 meals a day, have a nice place to live, and be a happy person? He said, I mean, he was just talking about that. I said, it's true.
I guess just speaking personally, I'm not so much concerned about how much other people make in terms of money, but how they use their services to potentially control the information that's being
What I'm
broadcast.
talking about,
Okay.
Sonia, use it for power, to
Mhm.
control, to be the number one. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's more than, I mean, look, when you think of how many people on this earth are starving, don't have food to eat, for God's sake. I mean, people look in the Middle East, in Gaza, and all these places, they're starving to death. And not blaming anybody. I'm not going to get into who's right or wrong in these wars, and I don't want that. But people in Sudan, people starving to death in Africa, and then and the kind of business that I'm in, the art business, which I'm really not in, but I still do it a little bit. Somebody pays $450 million for a painting. Man, can you imagine the good that $450 million could do in the world? And when these people are worth $500 billion, and they could change I mean, they could, it's terrible. I agree with you. It's an awful thing. And it's just greed and power, control. And one day they all drop dead. And then they have relations that do the same crap? So I agree with you, Tonya, but what am I going to do? It's been like that all my life. I've had to deal with. When I was 22 years old, I was picketing on the streets, about Vietnam, and fighting wars and the greed that was in the capitalist system. I was going to become a communist, for God's sake. I never did, but I was thinking seriously about anti the greed that exists in this world, and how, you know, and finally I realized, Stuart, the only person you can really change is yourself. And even today, in this meditation, I'll tell you frankly, I had a very great insight into my own life. I thought 2025, I'm going to get more students and really impart this work to more and more people. And I realized, Stuart, the only thing you should really want in your life is the truth, to get closer and closer to the truth, to divine beauty, to being connected with God, not even being a bodhisattva, not being somebody who's going to transform the world because you found something that is amazing that can really change people's lives.
Mhm.
But it's to get closer to the truth. And that is really what this work is all about. It's getting closer to the truth. And then in getting closer to the truth, you can deal with your financial thing. You can deal with your families, your relationships. You understand? Because you don't get into all that emotional gook that goes on in those situations. Now, this came to me today in this class. What am I here to do? To have 1 million people? How can I do this with 1 million people? It's not possible. But I can get closer to the truth. Not my truth, but a universal truth that serves God. I don't know what my truth is, but a truth that serves God. And that's the best I can do. And I think that was a wonderful thing for me to discover today. I really mean that. Because then I don't start pushing. I need more students. I need this. I need that. I need more power, more influence in the world. You know, what I need is to get closer to the truth. And you'll never get to the truth, but getting closer to the truth makes one into a remarkable human being. But nobody will ever get to the truth. But you get more wisdom, you get more knowledge, you get more consciousness. You treat people with more dignity. I mean, I'm reading about this president we're going to get, blaming politicians in California. I mean, it's just disgusting, 150,000 people are evacuating and, you know, 20,000 structures are burned down. And he's blaming the governor of California for this instead of what can I do to help? What can I do to help? How can I do something? I'm worth $3 billion. I'll contribute $25 million to help rebuild California. It's all politics. I got to get the governor of California. It's bizarre. So that's my answer to technology. Get closer to the truth in yourself. I mean that. Because ultimately, I mean, I remember just before Rudy died, he came back from India and he had a very hard time with his teacher. He finally said, look, I've had enough of this. I can't be treated like shit the rest of my life the way you treat me. He told this to his guru. And I'll never forget, he came back and I was sitting in the back of the apartment, the loft building that he owned, and I was living there at the time. And he came up and he sat down next to me. And he said to me, Stuart, you've got to realize that ultimately we're all in this alone. We study together to build a system that ultimately allows us to become one with God. And that is a process that takes place in each human being according to their own karma. I'll never forget, it brought tears to my eyes. I mean, he had so many students and people, and then he came and said that to me. Getting to the truth. That's a job that exists inside every human being. And part of getting to the truth is being willing to help other people get there also, if they want to get there. So that's my take on technology. Okay.
Thank you for sharing those gems of insights.
Does anyone else have a question?
I do have a question, Stuart.
Yes, Skender.
Um, it's about power and influence, I think. I've been sort of hanging out with artists and musicians these past, I guess, 15 years. And I'm stepping into the world more in a different way through job work. And I'm just kind of flabbergasted by how much like power and I don't know, like aura and intensity. And I like this and I don't like that. And it's kind of intense. And I'm kind of like, I think
Where are you? Oh, there you are. There's no voice, Skender. Boy, sound.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
I might have been just naive or something, but I'm like, it's pretty intense at times, you know. Just and how people just. I got a new colleague. I know how he's like drawing energy from me, sort of. He's like just. I don't know. I generally have a question, sort of like, do you have any?
You've probably come to an end of a cycle, and it's
Inshallah.
time to move on. Time
Okay.
to move on. It's an end of a cycle, and you're seeing the truth finally because you have grown in yourself to where you allow the truth to come in about what people do around you. So
Mm,
now it's time to say, no, I don't need this anymore.
mm,
I don't need, look, I'll tell you frankly about musicians. When I lived in Texas, I, I used to have a lot of musicians study with me. And I made arrangements with a church on the college campus in Denton, Texas, to get a hall. They gave us the church actually on a Friday night where I was producing musical concerts in
mm,
that church, and I would go and every night, every Friday night, I'd have musicians come. I had, and it was great fun. I gave all these musicians a place to play. And then finally, I had a deal with the musicians. And it was one of the most impossible things in my life at the time, dealing with those people. So I finally said to them, look, you have a place to play. The minister has given this place for you to play. He said that I can produce these things here, but I can turn it over to you and you can produce these concerts here. I can't deal with this anymore. I don't want to deal with this anymore. This is not the world that I want to live in. And I think they produced one concert and the whole thing fell apart. Just fell apart. I mean, there was a great thing. I had jazz, I had classical music, I had all kinds of stuff going on there.
mm.
And I had musicians coming. There must have been 1,000 musicians at that university. And it was a place for them to come on a Friday night and play. And it was great. And they were playing all kinds of music, and it was really wonderful. But when I turned it over to them, it lasted one concert. And they're all fighting with each other about the way to do it. And I said, no, I don't want to be in the middle of this anymore. I'm tired. I don't need to fight with you about the way this has to be done. It was going perfectly. You do it. One concert it lasted. And look at these musicians. That guy Diddy. I mean, he's being tried for sexual slavery. I mean, it's insane. the power they get to use it in such a negative way with other human beings. And there's so many people in the music world that are that way, you know? Not putting it down. There are people that create great music, and I love music. I mean, I have Spotify, I listen to it every day, and I make whole music lists of things I want to hear on Spotify, you know? And I love it, you know? But to be in that world, I mean, I was wanted to be in the theater world, in the movie world when I was younger, you know, and I couldn't take it. I said, no, this is not the life I want to live. I used to know actors and directors and people like that. It was just, I didn't want to live in that world. It was dealing with huge egos and who can have power and who, and people stepping all over each other and killing each other in order to get jobs. And I said, no, this is not for me. And I walked away from it. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. And then I was a gypsy for a few years. And then I met Rudy, and my whole life turned around.
Hmm.
Because what I really want to do is what I'm doing today. That's what I really wanted to do. I didn't know that then, but I found it out. What I really wanted was a pathway to a spiritual life and then working in the world to make that pathway work for me.
Hmm.
So you've reached the cycle, end of a cycle, Stender. Now you can just walk away from it and say, what do I need this for? What do you need it for? What, you know, you don't need other people's egos telling you what's right or wrong.
Yeah, but I meet it also in my teaching job, actually, like a coworker and these
But
goddamn
look,
European,
I need it in teaching meditation, dealing with people's egos.
right? So it's everywhere.
I really do. You can't believe the stuff that comes back to me. I don't want to come to your classes, but I want to be your student. Well, how are you going to do that? I have people tell me this. I don't want to sit and Zoom. You know, all right, that's what I do right now. You're going to miss all of this? It's bullshit. Go sit and look at yourself in the mirror and see how far that takes you. But I get that. Teaching this, I get that from people.
Mm,
You know, you're always going to be up against ego and opinions and people. And then the choices you make are the choices that really determine how far you go in your life. And then you begin to discover what's real, what's not real, what gets you closer to the truth, closer to a connection with God, spirit, and it enables you to live your karma in a way where, as they say in the Bible, you give to Caesar what's Caesar's, which is your karma. You give to God what's God's, which is your connection with spirit. So you give gratitude to Caesar because you live in this world learning how to get free of Caesar, you know, and then you give gratitude to God for being a pathway out of this nonsense.
cool. Yeah, thank you.
You
But
know,
I have kind of a second question, maybe also. What we are doing here is kind of the opposite of what most people do, I think.
yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, because we're sort of working on opening our heart and getting more relaxed and patient and sort of easy. I don't know, like,
Learning to be human beings, and in order to be a human being, you have to be really strong inside.
yeah, huh? Can I talk?
Everything in life will tear you apart.
Yeah,
Everything.
can I elaborate?
So you've got to build chi, you know, that is very strong inside yourself in order to just function here with an open heart.
Mm,
Because life tears it apart. It rips it apart.
mm,
You know, people's cynicism, their upset, their judgment, their this, their that, their you're wrong. What are you doing? I had it all my life. My family, I had it.
mm,
I was the black sheep of the family. They refused to even talk about me. He runs around traveling in Europe and hitchhiking, and I never told them half the things I was doing. They would have really all had heart attacks, you know, when I was younger. Anyway, I had that, and one day I get a call from him. Can I come and study with you? My mother called me up one day. I have a tumor in my breast. Can I come and or I said, no, I'll come to you. I'll come out there where you live and I'll do the healing work. And the tumor went away in her breast.
Mm.
And then she started coming to my classes, which is, are you talking about working out karma, sitting and doing this with your mother? That's pretty serious karma you're working out. And she used to come every week, and the people used to in the ashram there used to treat her so wonderfully. It really brought tears to my eyes to see how kind they were to her.
Yeah, we did.
Mhm.
So get closer to the truth. And don't worry about all this nonsense that goes on, power and this and that. That will give you a power and a strength that is pure and is divine and is connected with higher energy in the universe. And you can use it to uplift yourself and to uplift humanity, the people that want it. You know, see, I have to give up this thing that this could save the world.
Mm.
Probably could if people would do this stuff, what I teach.
Mm.
I have to give it up because the world is not going to come here. I have to get closer to truth in myself.
Mm.
And that will enable me to fulfill my karma on the earth.
Well, we could advertise more. I've been thinking about it, making videos of your YouTube
Oh,
videos.
yeah, okay. Look, I got 1,000 of these on YouTube and Facebook. And I got a guy who wrote me, said, you sold, I got an email the other day. I went to my website and sent me, I got this WordPress thing, an email about a Tonka, a Tibetan painting I sold to somebody in 1986. And if I know who I bought it from, and he has it now, and he'd like to know the provenance of that Tonka. That's what I get from people, right? I wrote him a nice letter. It was a beautiful Tonka. It really was. It really is a very, very fine work of Tibetan art. That he,
Mm.
I told him that. I said, it's wonderful. It's something to worship. It's something spiritual in your life. I said, but I don't remember who I got it from. I don't. I sold thousands of those things in my life. Well, maybe not thousands, but 500 of them,
Mm.
you know? So I don't remember where, 80% of them even came from, you know?
Mm.
Do remember, I'll tell you a story. I'm selling Tonkas. I remember Chris knows this, I remember I got this Tonka that was really beautiful, really fine painting of the Shamapa, but painted in the 17th century. So I'm out having some coffee with some dealer friends of mine around the corner from my gallery. And I get a phone call from Chris and said, oh, there's a Tibetan Lama here with a whole group of people, and he wants to meet you. Can you come back to the store, to the gallery? I said, okay. So I come into the gallery and I hear all the talk and I'm showing them works of art. And I finally look at him and I say, you're not His Holiness the Shamapa, are you? So he said to me, yes. He said, Your Holiness, I have a painting I said to you that you're going to have to have. So I took him up to my loft and I rolled out this painting of himself in the 17th century.
Mm.
Of a Shamapa. And he looks at it and he said, oh my God, I remember this painting when I was a young monk in a monastery in Tibet. And they said, this is a painting you should have. So his students came, oh, you should give it to the Shamapa. You should give it. I said, no, I'll tell you what I'll do. I said, I paid $2,500 for this painting. I said, how many people do you have in your monastery? Oh, we got 300 people. I said, look, if you chip in $1 a piece or $10 a piece, you understand, you can pay me the $2,500 and I will make a nickel of profit. It's my gift to the Shamapa. And they went and did it. The next day they came back with the money. I mean, it was incredible. And I became really good friends with that guy. I met him in Kathmandu. Oh, you got to come to Rumtek and visit me, and you can stay for as long as you want, and blah, blah, blah. And he was a very holy person. He was like like the Karmapa or the Dalai Lama on that level. He used to come shopping in my store. Remember that, Chris?
Yeah, I remember when he wrote on his American Express traveler checks.
He insisted on buying a bronze from me. He insisted. I wanted to practically give it to him. He insisted, and I said to him, I said, so it was $1,500. He gave me $1,500 traveler's checks, the Shamapa, something Shamapa. It was really hard for me to cash those traveler's checks. It was like something. But anyway, it was kind of the of Tonka selling. Tonkas in my business that I used to run.
I
Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
have another question.
Oh, gee.
Uh, do you recommend having these type of symbols in your home, like statues and tankos and
And come to my house, and you won't have to ask that question.
seen
Tell
it?
me how we live here. So, I mean, look, just this room. I have Buddha here, right behind me. There's a Virgin Mary and a Christ figure from Goa from the 18th century right on my desk. There's a Ganesha right next to her. I mean, I love these things, and I don't get them to have a spiritual life. I just like them. I think they're wonderful art,
Mm.
fun art, you know? I mean, and I just I've always loved these things, even before I met Rudy. I remember the first time I ever saw a Tonka. First time. There was a museum in Manhattan called the Riverside Museum on 110th Street or something in Riverside Avenue, Riverside Drive. And I said, you've never been in that museum. And I said, why don't you go in and see what they have? And I went in, and they had an exhibition of Tibetan Tonkas. They had about 30 of them in an exhibition. And I walked through, it was like walking. I said, my God, Stuart, this is like your family. You have these visions all the time of these kind of things they're painting in these paintings. That was the first time I ever saw it, ever was, in front of a Tonka. And now I live with these things. I love them, and I sell them too because you got to live, but I love them. And, I have 12th century Buddhas and from Japan and big paintings from Japan and rugs now I started buying, beautiful, Caucasian rugs. I like tribal rugs from the Caucasian. I like these things. You don't have to live with them. I like them. And
Mm.
they create, to me, a wonderful environment to live in, you know? It's a very spiritual kind of environment that I live in here. So yeah, I enjoy that.
Mhm.
Do you need it? Nobody needs it. Do I need it? No, I don't need it. I just enjoy it. You got to spend money on something, You might as well be on things you enjoy living with.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Zeus.
You're welcome.
Mhm.
Next time you come to New York, you'll see my apartment, how I live here. It's nice.
But I've seen it, Stuart. I was there. I,
Yeah, they didn't have as much things as I have. So,
okay. You had even more. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
see. Okay.
All right. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? So try to use this meditation to get closer to the profoundest truth that exists inside each and every human being. That's connection with God. That's the purpose of all these classes. Not to be important in the world, not to have power, control. You know, it's really to find truth in oneself, honest, sincere depth of truth in one's connection with God. Okay, if there are no more questions, then there will be meditation on Tuesday. Thank you. God bless you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Stuart.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
You might
Thank
still.
you. God bless
Thank
you.
you.
Mhm. Have a good evening. Good